So hello and welcome to today's CPD session. The presentation you see on the screen now will provide a guide and a reference point as we progress through the content, and it can be found in the handout section of the Go-To webinar control panel. There's also a participant handbook in the documents handout section if you'd like to download and use it to record your ideas and thoughts during the session, but it's not mandatory. It's just there for your information if you'd like it. We do encourage questions, so please use the question box to share any you have. If you haven't already done so, please let us know that you can hear us okay by using the question box, which you'll find in your webinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. The session's going to be a mixture of providing information, exploring best practice, asking questions and sharing your ideas and experiences. It's therefore vital that everyone participates as much as they can, sharing their ideas in a collaborative way. Please be aware that the chat box only allows organisers to add anything, so we'll do so in terms of links and things you'll need to participate in the session activities. If you do need to share or ask anything, please use that question box. We'll also be providing QR codes as links to activities, so you might want to ensure you have a smartphone or a tablet to hand in readiness for those activities. And if you don't have access to a smartphone or a tablet, don't worry, we're going to use alternative methods to include you too. We'll be using links instead, so please don't worry. It was just a heads up if you'd like to grab it. Okay, so welcome. I'm Helen Scanlon. I'm part of NCFE's provider development team. I've been supporting our Education Childcare T Level providers since May 2020, and I will share learning from this time during the session. You'll see on the screen now the objectives for today's session. The session will last approximately 1 hour. It's being recorded to allow all relevant colleagues to access it afterwards, and of course you to review it afterwards if you'd like to. You'll also find the presentation we use in the handout section just as a reminder. Hopefully we'll be joined today, the magic of Wi-Fi and remote webinars, by Janet King, who will hopefully bring her industry and subject specialist knowledge to enhance today's session further. Okay, we're going to start off by asking the question about the subject of today's session. I guess we're lucky that today's subject has its own element in the Education Childcare Qual Spec in Core Element 10. We're therefore going to structure the input of today's session on the basis that you're all experienced practitioners. But to start us off, I'm going to ask a question on this initial poll related to how challenging teaching the TQ, or the technical qualification, is in relation to today's topic. I'm going to show you the choices and then launch the poll. So please let us know, how challenging do you think is teaching the T level in relation to the equality and diversity needs of your students? So if you could please choose the best option for you there in relation to how challenging teaching the TQ is in relation to the the equality and diversity needs of your students. We've got about half of the attendees voted so far, so I'm just going to leave it a little bit longer and just give everyone a chance to vote. Okay, thank you so much. We're at 100%. So I'm just going to share the results, and you'll see that everybody is in agreement that it's challenging. And I think every qualification is challenging in relation to equality and diversity, but it kind of feels something a bit more challenging when it's a new qualification. Experience from the first year of delivery has shown us that generally the higher level or higher achieving students are the ones who are choosing to attend the T level. So the challenges of students with E&D support needs haven't really been a major issue. However, if we think too narrowly about E&D, then we might miss identifying and supporting students appropriately. Not all E&D support needs are visible or made known to us. So let's try and break this down in the session today and share some strategies and activities which would help us to meet equality needs and promote diversity in our teaching, learning and assessment practice. Okay, we're going to start off and we're going to carry on now with asking another question in relation to your definition of equality and diversity. We're going to use a Jamboard activity, and I've put the link to this Jamboard into the chat. So please use it to go to the Jamboard page for today's session and add your ideas on the sticky notes. And I'm going to show you what I've done already with it just to get us going. So this is our first Jamboard page, and you can see that I've put a sticky note on there just to get us going. So we've got my name, Helen, and then my definition of what equality and diversity is. If you haven't used Jamboard before, on the left-hand side here, you'll see the control panel where it has the sticky notes section. You would click on that, type in whatever it is your idea is and pop your name on if you want to, and then save it, and it'll put it directly onto the board. And you can choose your sticky note color as well, which is quite fun. So if you could please give us your idea in relation to a definition of equality and diversity. What does it mean to you, please? Okay, hello Janet, good morning, no problem.
Good morning, Helen. Good morning, everyone.
Thanks a lot for joining us today. So we're just doing some definitions of what is equality and diversity, and I've asked people to pop them onto this Jamboard. Alternatively, if you have problems with the Jamboard, please pop it into the question box instead, and I can share it that way instead. I'm going to talk about the one that I've put on there just briefly while people are having a think. When I first was teaching and we had the Adult Learning Inspectorate in, which obviously got merged into Ofsted at a later date, the ALI, the Adult Learning Inspectorate officer, inspector said to me, so Helen, what is equality and diversity? I was working for Barnardo's as a training supervisor, working with learners with special educational needs in relation to pre-vocational learning. So that was my answer. My answer was, oh, well, it's treating everybody the same. And that lovely inspector said to me, is it, Helen? And I said, oh, heck, it's not, is it? It's treating everybody completely differently. And she said, absolutely. And I had that epiphany in that second, which was really quite handy. So yeah, it's not about treating everybody the same. And I'm really pleased that the inspector allowed me to pull it back, if you like. Janet, have you any initial thoughts on today's topic, please?
I think when we think about equality and diversity and inclusion and so on, that we do tend to think about differentiation, and we think about, the way that we respond, the way that we plan and so on, but making sure that we're thinking about those different strategies to enable that really important. And how much do we think about that when we're actually, doing our planning? So, and especially when we're thinking about education and childcare and preparing students for those different needs of individuals and the circumstances that may impact and affect teaching and learning across the early years and through education. Really important. And starting with ourselves, we sometimes will learn in different ways on different days depending on how we're feeling. So just bringing how we're feeling into the mix of equality as well, and how that impacts how we learn. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks a lot, Janet. We have had a couple of people put things into the question box, and it's bringing in the differences in people's needs in relation to education, so what they're bringing to the classroom, but also having that diverse range of students in the classroom as well. So thanks to those who've provided their ideas there. We'll continue on now. Okay, so here are a couple of definitions, and it's important to highlight that the terms do have different meanings, the terms equality and diversity. So this first one is from the TUC. It explains that equality is about equality of opportunity, that everyone should have equal access to opportunities. In an education context, this would impact on our work via a review of the environment, our resource production and use of the resources, and levels and type of support offered, to name but a few. And for diversity, they suggest that we should value the differences between people. We'll discuss how both of these impact on the teaching and learning of T levels in today's session. Okay, so this second definition continues the positivity about diversity and extends this to equality in relation to the benefits of having different perspectives and leading to better decisions. So that's quite positive as well. This final quote we're sharing is from us at NCFE. Everyone here works on the premise that we demonstrate, develop and promote inclusive practice in everything we do. My take on this is the more diverse we are, and by this I mean our staff teams, general awareness and work practices, the better our decisions, work and ideas are going to be. Okay, we're going to carry on now with looking at some general principles. So you can either use the Jamboard or you can pop them into the question box. So what are the general principles that we would take into account when teaching using an inclusive approach? Before we share ours, we really want you to share your ideas and thoughts first. So I'm going to go back to the Jamboard and go on to the second page, where you can see what are the general principles. And again, I've added one to get us going. Find out about your students and their individual needs would be the ideas. And Janet, just why people are thinking, can we have your thoughts on the general principles, please?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Helen, I can't actually see your screen. I can only see the poll at the moment. So I don't know if that's what other people are also able to see or whether it's just because of my IT issues. So I think if we were talking generally about principles, though, in terms of equality, I'm just trying to think of what people have also been saying in the chat in terms of it's just thinking, isn't it? And really thinking about those individual needs, some serious planning. So it's all about the planning and the preparation, but also knowing about individual circumstances of students as well. Thinking about giving a diverse range of teaching and learning. I know we've been talking in the past about innovation and different strategies, you know. Oh, I'm with you now, Helen, on your screen. So that's fantastic. Thank you. Um, yeah, so I think those general principles just of tuning in to the individual needs of our students, differentiating, and also being mindful of offering diverse opportunities. Um, and for example, how individual people may prefer to actually learn or express how they're learning. That's also important. I like discussions, I like communication. When I was a younger student, I think I found that more difficult, however, and I would have preferred to be learning in a different way. So yeah, I think those principles of differentiation, obviously we're looking at any particular need, and that's one thing, but then it's also thinking about reaching students all of the time through those strategies, isn't it? So yeah, I'd be thinking about diverse teaching and learning strategies then, I think.
Lovely, thank you. Yes, it looked like the GoToWebinar was stuck on those poll results, and although I'd clicked hide, we hadn't got away from it. So what I'm going to do is just go back to the PowerPoint so that we can so I can show you those quotes that I was talking about earlier. So just bear with me. Those are the definitions that I was talking about on the last screen. So the first one, as I say, from the TUC, just highlighting that equality and diversity are two different terms. Then the next one for local government, talking about diversity and inclusion. And then, as I say, that last one from NCFE ourselves. So I do apologise about that. Don't know why the GoToWebinar didn't join in. It was obviously having a bit of a think. So I'll go back to the Jamboard now. Hopefully everybody can see it. So page one was this one, what is equality and diversity? Page two is this one, the general principles. So if you have any to share, please do, as I say, either on this Jamboard or back on the into the question box of the GoToWebinar panel, please. Okay. We'll keep moving on, and as I say, if you have any questions at all in the meantime, please do pop them into the question box. So while we talk through our general principles here, please make a note of any takeaways you have in relation to your T-level students. And you will see this reference in the participant handbook in the handout section if you're using it. So the first of our ideas relates to treating people as individuals and not conditions. Don't generalise or stereotype students thinking you already know their needs, as each individual will have differing needs. Good practice would be to avoid using an adjective as a noun to describe someone. So that what I mean by that is people shouldn't be described as dyslexic or disabled. They have dyslexia or are a disabled person. Small things like this can really make a big difference, which also includes not making any assumptions, finding out from the student how their learning is impacted on and what teachers and assessors need to do or adapt, which also includes not making any assumptions and being aware of your own attitudes and opinions, both positive and negative, and how they could impact on learning. So please also develop a positive learning environment and promote this with your students so they can do it in their practice as well. One in which students are confident that anything they share is used to enhance their learning experience for them. And strong and trusting working relationships with students will be needed to identify and meet their individual needs. Teachers should also take time to reflect on, sit back and review what works for a particular student and what doesn't, and work with them collaboratively to make any adaptations that they're going to need. But then, as I say, don't be afraid to try out new ideas and new approaches. Teachers may need to explore different ways of working in order to find out which is the most effective, using the professional working relationship with the students to work together and agree those strategies collectively. So thinking about resources, it's important to ensure that they are appropriate for students as individuals. They must meet the needs of the students. And remember that a resource which is perfect for one student might be the absolute opposite for another. And finally, get support from your organisation's assistive technology and support specialists. I know the experience I have working with students who were deaf or blind were far more effective and positive because I worked with my colleagues in the assistive technology and learning support departments. For example, having resources converted to Braille and working with signers really helped me to ensure that my practice was inclusive. And all of those are adapted from a document from the DFES called Access for All, which is a wonderful document for identifying strategies that you can use with your students, which are best practice. So our next question is, what are your students' needs? You've got that Menti code, the QR code, which you could either scan, or I'm going to pop that link you can see on the screen now into the chat box, so you can use that if need be. And I'm going to go to the Menti site so you can hopefully participate. What are the E&D support needs of your students, please? And you'll get this page up showing you which words, and access to pop words into the website to give us your ideas. So I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint and open up that screen for us. So while I load this Menti, please pop your ideas into there. It's going to create a word cloud for us. So please tell us what your equality and diversity needs of your students are. Please also let us know if you're having problems with that link or that code, so that we can action it if need be. So what are the E&D needs of your students, please? Okay, we've got a couple coming in through the question box. I'm not sure if the Menti's working properly because there's nothing coming on that at the moment. But in the question box, people are telling us that some of them have learners with dyslexia, and we are going to talk about dyslexia and support strategies later on. But also, and it probably is quite topical, mental health is coming up as well there. So lovely, thank you for sharing those. Okay, we're now going to explore some strategies which can be used to enhance teaching and learning experiences for students with individual support needs. We'll explore the needs and strategies using a holistic approach, not only focusing on learning disabilities or difficulties, but also bringing in other important factors and possible areas where an adaptive approach might be needed, especially considering the impact of disrupted learning and living that COVID has brought us over the past couple of years. However, we're not suggesting that everything we're going to say in the next few slides should be acted upon and used in your teaching and learning. The strategies we're going to run through would need to be adapted and used in direct relation to your students and the needs of your students. Just a quick reminder as well that the question box is there for you to ask questions, please. Okay, we're going to start off with students' mental health needs. It's already been brought up by somebody in the question box. So, having that positive working relationship is important. Having those quick and easy wins and creating successes is also important. And I think important for me as well. Don't be a counsellor if you're not a trained counsellor. Yes, we are here to support our students, but please know your own limits. Janet, is any important points from that you'd like to share?
Than what you've just said. I think we've got to protect ourselves as well, and I think especially, with the increase of blended learning, the lack of socialization that's brought, the impact that's had on mental health and all of that. I think knowing who's out there, who's working within your organization who can help, signposting, but also involving those people in tutorials and things like that, so that you're giving that wider access opportunity and knowledge to your students, protecting yourself as well, because everybody has been impacted in some way from this. So making sure that there is that sort of protective layer, and if there are pastoral support networks within your teaching and learning environment, making sure that those links are clear for students and involving those individuals in tutorial sessions, for example. When it comes to specific strategies, also making sure that where you're dealing with students with individual needs, that you're also working in a professional network where you're gaining advice from other colleagues, where you're gaining advice from other professionals, not just for consistency of practice for that student, but also to give that reassurance that that there is somebody there and that you're working together and you're working collaboratively. Because sometimes, the demands of individual students are very high, and you'll want to do everything that you can to make sure that you're doing the best, but this is also draining on you. So that professional network of support would really be my key message there, Helen.
Lovely, thank you, Janet. I'm going to move on now to the students with dyslexia. We have to remember that dyslexia is a processing difficulty. It's not necessarily just about reading and writing. So a memory processing difficulty is what dyslexia is. Although I'm no expert, I have to had some training in it. So a range of activities there and strategies that you could probably use. But it's really important to know that every learner with dyslexia needs their own specific support strategies put in place. Everybody's very, very different. So all of these are how they would impact. Generally, you would need to look at them specifically. But everything on there, Janet, I don't know if you agree, it seems to be best practice anyway, or really good practice anyway.
Absolutely. It's about making sure that teaching and learning is happening. And you're absolutely right when you say that, dyslexia, if we were describing it with a textbook sort of version, and how those specific strategies might work, you'd come up with this sort of consistent list. Yet you're applying that to individuals, and everybody is completely different. So you mix a colour with a different colour, you're going to get a different outcome. And I think it's absolutely the same. So we can't expect students with dyslexia to all have the same needs, and to all be appreciative of the same strategies. So yeah, absolutely, everybody is different, and the way that we feel as well is certainly going to impact the way that we learn, regardless of any individual specific need.
Absolutely. Lovely, thank you. And if anything we're saying is prompting any questions, please, as I say, pop them into the question box. So the next set of students are students who are blind or partially sighted. I've worked with students who are blind and partially sighted, and as I say, all of these strategies are adapted from Access for All, but I've used all of these and made they've helped with my awareness. But little things like if you've got a student who has a guide dog, a support dog with them, of course, you've got a different set of situations about how you manage that as well, and how you work with the student themselves to find out what those individual preferences are and make sure that as much as you can, you meet them. And something as small as eliminating background noise and which colour of pen you use on a board or on a flip chart can make a massive difference. Janet, have I missed anything specific to education and childcare, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think if you're thinking about the circumstances, obviously in education and childcare, and you're thinking about that wider requirements of the qualification, there's all of that to keep in the mix as well in terms of skills-based application. And there may be the need for a mentor within that classroom environment, and perhaps also in the placement environment, depending on the circumstances and the way that the assessment criteria can be met. So it's important to make sure that if that student doesn't have specific support, are they entitled to that? You know, what can be done? So raising those questions to make sure that everything's not falling on your shoulders, and making the best use of resources, whether that's through innovative technological resources, or what makes a massive difference here is having that significant other person in the classroom environment, I think, to really support that student and to make sure that your teaching and learning is being cascaded in an appropriate way.
Absolutely. And of course, the T level students are going to possibly exposed to children or young people who have these um, learning difficulties or disabilities. So even if we're
Absolutely.
not, yeah, if we're not using them ourselves because our students, for example, aren't blind or partially sighted, it is something that we'll need to have an awareness of for the children or young people that they work with. So it's the
Mm.
same with deaf or partially hearing people. Um, I think there's been such a positivity of opinion towards deaf and partially hearing people in general because of our current situation with the deaf dancer in Strictly Come Dancing. So there's a lot of positivity about it and how effective and um, how good, if you like, deaf or hard of hearing or partially hearing people actually are in relation to any. I went my first job in hairdressing, and we had a student join the salon I worked in who was deaf, and she was one of the best hairdressers I've ever worked with. So anything really in relation to deaf and partially hearing from you, Janet?
I think you're absolutely right in terms of raising an awareness, and we all need to have that and to be exposed to that learning experience. I think also making sure, you know, sometimes within our children's services, within local authorities, they have experts working within that. They may have resources that students can look at. You know, you might be able to visit a centre or an organisation that works with individuals who are blind or partially sighted, or deaf with partial hearing. So you know, have a look, find out what's there, because these resources are things that children and young people may well be using in their own teaching and learning environment. And it might be that you can actually introduce students to the types of things that are out there and how they're being used. And there'll also perhaps be students within the classroom who are, as Helen has said, working with children and young people who have got sensory impairment in this way. So, you know, what's going on to enhance learning and to maintain motivation and inspiration in those teaching and learning environments? How is it working? So lots of things that would lead me perhaps to guest speakers within those settings as well. So yeah, lots of things that you can do to make sure students have that raised awareness that it's not just theoretical, that you can bring in some sort of practical workshops and expose all students to that wonderful learning experience as well.
Absolutely, and of course our use of technology now allows us to have those written transcripts and recordings available in different formats, and a lot of things are done automatically for us now. So we can, you can be in a Zoom or a Teams meeting, and it will transcribe it for you as well. So using technology to make our lives easier would also be a strategy I would advocate. Our next one is students with disabilities, and obviously that's a very generic term. There can be a massive range of disabilities. But same again, they're going to be working with children and young people, possibly with a range of disabilities. So it's making use of those assistive technologies, finding out individual needs, checking and overcoming, if you like, the access relationship arrangements, sorry, and obviously building those trusting relationships with them. Bring the last one up for this one as well at the same time. Students with autistic spectrum disorders, that positive working relationship is really important, having that named person they can go to and not using abstract language or metaphors. And let's call it a day. And I know the first time I said that when I had an autistic student in my group, it was the last time I also said it as well, because the session just went to pot when I said that. So being aware of metaphors and being very unambiguous and establishing those routines and preparing them for any changes in advance. Janet, anything you want to add to those points for us, please?
I think it's really a summary of everything that's been said about remembering to focus on individual needs, which I know we all do. It's remembering that some students will be exposed to special educational needs and disabilities in terms of their placements, in terms of their industry experiences. Some may not. So it's about maybe making those connections with special educational needs schools, for example, or with a Senko, and having guest speakers, practical workshops, where possible, and maybe visits where possible as well. But certainly making a connection so that we're not just looking at the theoretical side of all of these different things that we've been talking about with Helen this morning, but we're also being able to feel some of that by listening to people who are working with children and young people with SEND every day. What sorts of things are being done? How teaching and learning is so enjoyable, so rich in these settings. So, talking to people who do it and including guest speakers to really broaden that understanding, because sometimes it can be very much just an exposure to the theoretical understanding of it. Living and breathing and feeling and seeing and really listening to people who are working within these types of learning environments every day can really make a massive difference and raise people's awareness, take away students' fears sometimes, release those anxieties, and just open up the teaching and learning and how that takes place and how that happens within these settings. So yeah, use that network of professionals. Don't feel it all has to be done by you, and make the most of that so that you're continuing to bring theory and practice together every step of the way.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Janet. So we're now being a bit more holistic and more general across the needs of students, and not just looking at, so, for example, SEN or specific needs, but more general needs. And there's a lot of the time with English, people take things for granted that students know these things. But of course, we've had a very odd last couple of years, and a lot of these English skills have been not overlooked, but kind of missed to an extent. Speaking to different people for different purpose, different tone, formality, etc. These are skills that may need to be developed, and they would come under the equality banner, if you like, for working with students with different needs. Listening skills, in a professional context, taking turns in a discussion, actively listening and redirecting if it's going off on the wrong slant sort of thing, wrong tangent. These are all skills. Academic and research and reading are massive skills that the students may not have and may need support and development of. Using dictionaries or creating a personal dictionary might be useful. So supporting using a dictionary, but actually creating a dictionary of their own personal technical keywords and terms. Skimming and scanning skills, they're very different and we use them for different purposes. And there's also detailed reading, reading for bias, reading for intent, reading between the lines. There's so many different reading skills that the students may struggle with. And planning for writing, I know I'm a governor in a local primary school, and writing skills are the skills that they found the most impacted on with remote learning. So how do you write? What do you write? What's the purpose of it? Who's your audience? How accurate is it? Is the tone right? The formality right? There's all sorts of stuff there with planning and writing skills. And then proofreading work as well. And I know when a lot of written work is done on a computer, we over rely sometimes on the spell checker, and if there's no red or green line under it, it's okay. But if there is a red or green line, it's not okay. Well, neither of those are always the case. So proofreading skills are also massive. And of course, all of these skills, again, will need to be to a certain level if the students are going to support the children and young people they work with. And that was a very much English focused slide, Janet. Is there anything from Education Childcare specifically that I could bring you in on, please?
Yeah, of course, Helen, and all of those things are incredibly important for teaching and learning, absolutely. I think one of the key things that sort of aligns anyway with English is that confidence in communication, because I think that's one of the things that's been greatly impacted anyway by the way that we've been working at the moment. And it's been very easy, hasn't it, for students to contribute less, shall we say, to that kind of blended approach of teaching and learning. And therefore those skills and that confidence to be able to take part in a discussion, to know how to move a discussion forward, to actually feel that they can contribute something meaningful, and the turn taking. And sometimes, I think those discussions in group work, that's what's been hit the most. And I just always relate it back to, well, some of the students that I worked with who, please give me an essay to write, please send me off to the library, please let me do something on my own or with my closest peer, because I can do that confidently. Don't put me in a group with people I don't know. Don't expect me to have conversations and communications and take part in discussions and role plays and so on. And those are the students that need that support with this. And I think sometimes we underestimate the learning that's required, not just in the knowledge of a topic area, but the learning that students need in terms of finding that voice, finding that confidence to contribute to that sort of teaching and learning environment where discussions are important. And I'm just thinking about the Employer Set project and the communication and the discussions that are part and parcel of that. It's a very different skill. And of course, communication is a much needed skill in the world of education and childcare in industry as well. So I would say communication, Helen.
Lovely, thank you. We'll go to the maths area next, and I'm going to get the ideas up. I know that students can have a very negative previous or past experience in learning maths. 2 and 2 is never going to be 5. So the power of might in that first bullet point means that you can ask a student to do a maths calculation activity, whatever you want to call it. But instead of saying, right, what is the answer? What might the answer be? Kind of supports the thought process and builds the confidence of a student. So please never underestimate the power of might. We've got dyslexia and dyscalculia and how they impact on maths, as I say, remembering. Dyslexia is a memory processing difficulty, and that can turn up with numbers as well as letters. So that's where you have dyscalculia coming in. Using concrete examples, and of course the students' interest to get them involved in in contextualizing the maths that they do. And different methods for doing things are okay. As long as you get to the right answer, you don't have to use the process or system that works for somebody else. So, you know, for example, long multiplication, there are so many different ways and methods of doing that, and that's okay so long as you get to the right answer. So being aware of those different methods will also help provide equality of access kind of thing. Something that a lot of students struggle with is the importance of place value, and I don't know why this is. The only thing I can kind of put it down to is the massive numbers we're used to relaying off with phone numbers now. I know when I was a child, your phone number was 4 or 5 numbers long, whereas now we're used to rattling off these really large numbers, but that kind of knocks us off where place value is and the importance of place value. So please have an awareness of that and how it impacts on accessing maths questions. I'm not going to go through them all, Jan. I'm just going to say, is there anything else you want to say about maths in education childcare, please?
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Helen. So what I would say is just where maths is concerned, and Helen's right, a lot of individuals might have that closed mindset, you know, I didn't come here to do maths, I can't do maths, that sort of thing. And I think to actually try and support with that, I'd be thinking about what's going on in the early years for maths, what's going on in primary schools and beyond for maths, and maybe using some practical activities to explore that. So you know, we've got their real examples, and I think that's where I would start. And then the concepts of maths, which may well be something that is required, you're sort of building it, but you're building it almost with the student, and you're putting it in the context of what are those young children in early years doing that helps them to support their maths. You need to know what's expected there by you know, in the early learning goals, for example, by the end of that reception year. So what's expected there? How can we think of mathematical experiences for those young children? And then what concepts are being introduced there? And you're building on the students' own mathematical skills, introducing the language in context of what the students are actually studying. It can sometimes help.
Absolutely. And one final thing I'll say about our use of calculators is making us less reliant on our own error checking and estimating to be that sense check. So if it's being put into a calculator and that's the answer, that is the answer, regardless of how crazy the answer is in reality. So getting students to check their answers is also really important. So this next one I'm going to hand over to Janet to talk about.
Thank you. So when we think about work and industry skills, and we're thinking about this in terms of equality, diversity, inclusion, and so on, I think it's important that what are the skills that are being required anyway, and we can see this list here and the importance of all of these things. So reliability, dependability, communication we've talked about, but making sure that all of those students that you're working with are feeling confident, that they are feeling ready for placement. It's been an incredibly difficult year, as we you know, we keep saying, well, that year and beyond. And I think being aware of that, students that are doing a T level, students that are doing any qualification that requires placement as part of it, have got an extra layer. And Helen and I are always talking about this. There is an extra layer of requirement. So, you know, are they ready to be team working, to be working collaboratively and so on, and preparing them the best way that they can so that they're following you know, they're working independently and autonomously and feel ready to work on their own initiative. What can be done there? Can we sort of tie them up with a mentor in the placement, for example? Can we arrange some sort of induction? Can we have some online guest speakers and blogs where the student can be introduced to their mentor? We've been using that so much, haven't we? And if it's a case of interrupting placements and not following that usual pattern, then what can we do to make sure that there is some kind of connection or buddy system that's helping with that confidence building? So we need students to be highly motivated. They are going to be professionals. I think it's emphasizing that all the way through, because that's going to sort of raise that profile and role modeling through the language and the power of language that we use with our students. So Yes, all students, everybody. I make a mistake every day. I couldn't work out the technology to get on this webinar this morning, for example. I make a mistake every day, but I think it's learning from our mistakes and the importance of professional development and setting those kind of thoughts through our own positive role modeling processes. Students that are in their work, that are in their work placement, that are developing these industry skills, we can tease out powers of reflection, being analytical. What happened? Why did that happen, do you think? What might have happened if we didn't? Are there any other ways that that situation could have been managed, do you think? Um, and of course, being objective, thinking about what's actually happening here and what could be done to do that. So all of these industry skills are very, very important. And I think the key here, especially in the climate we're in, is, are students ready for this? Let's make sure they are and do as much preparation as we can to ensure that students enjoy. There's that love to learn, so that students are enjoying that and they're making those opportunities to bring that coherence of theory and skill together.
Lovely, thanks, Janet. Okay, we're going to move on to some more factors now, but we can't finish this topic off without making reference to the protected characteristics from the Equality Act. As we've already explored disability, we haven't included it in this list. So within these overall areas, there are a number of subdivisions, but as per all other E&D areas, it's vital to get to know students individually and building that trusting relationship, which allows them to share with you what their needs are and how they're best met. So on this one, we've also included a link to an organisation who are part of Global Movement for Change for lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, questioning and ace or LGBTQ plus people. Imagining a world where all LGBTQ plus people are free to be themselves and live their life to the full. And over the past 30 years, these have adapted transformative change in the lives of LGBTQ plus people in the UK. Today we have equal rights to love, marry and have children, and our lives, families and relationships are represented as part of the national curriculum in most of the UK. So by sharing best practice, this organisation support companies to create an inclusive workplace. They have e-learning sessions for schools, colleges and children and young people services staff, and they work with educational organisations to develop their inclusive practices. Their research with teachers, children and young people has shown that 45% of lesbian, gay, bi and trans young people have experienced homophobic, biphobic or transphobic bullying. More than 8 in 10 primary teachers have never had any specific training in how to tackle homophobic bullying. 1 in 3 trans pupils are not able to be known by their preferred name at school, and 64% of trans pupils are bullied at school for being trans. And if you'd like more information about the support they offer and what they can do, please have a look at their website. Janet, some of those statistics were quite scary, weren't they? Have you got anything you want to finish us off on this, please?
Yeah, absolutely. They really were. And I think, again, I would say this is about the whole thing about this and about this topic, of course, is about respect. It's about valuing each other, and having that mutual respect. And I would say again that there will be people within your settings that will be able to come in, that will be able to talk to students, that will be able to share a network of support and so on in terms of what's available within your educational settings. And I think make the most of that and make sure that during tutorials, during those sessions, that those links are made so that students know that there are those connections to support them. But in terms of raising that wider awareness, I think this is about valuing and respecting each other, and that cuts across everything. So I think it's about making the most of that and making sure that those key messages there are modelled throughout our teaching and learning.
Absolutely, thank you. But so all of these E&D factors impact on teachers' differentiation strategies, which is why the two subjects are put together. And just to summarise, I'd like to share a short story from an observation of a teaching practice I did. It was in a childcare lesson where the topic being taught was cooking in different countries and cultures. So the teacher started talking about Africa, and I knew from the class profile that one of the students in the group was from Uganda. Although the teacher was very positive and engaging, the students appeared a little confused as to why their peer was not explaining the topic, and it had a negative impact on the learning and the atmosphere in the classroom. Surely inclusion and the promotion of diversity would have been enhanced if the student themselves had explained or demonstrated how she would cook in her own country and her own culture. And this would have had a more positive and powerful impact on the learning and the lesson. Just a thought I want to leave with you. I will say that the teacher was mortified when I pointed this out at the end of the lesson, and she had a really good reflect on her practice and learned from it. So before we go any further, we're going to just recap what we mean by differentiation. It's relating to working with groups of students, because even in small groups, the needs of the students are going to be different. So we're going to focus the content on this session on working with cohorts and adapting sessions related to individual student differences in that group. With that in mind, it's therefore about teachers adapting their delivery and support practice in relation to their students' needs, and having a range of activities is always good practice and links to preferred learning styles and allows for the students to have time and structure to learn effectively as individuals. So the biggest impact on differentiation is when the teacher considers the students' needs, which we've already started to think about in relation to T levels. And considering the students' needs, acknowledging levels of progress and planning to meet their needs is still important, but so are ad hoc and responsive activities. During a session when formative assessment gives the teacher an idea of how well the students are progressing, they can then adapt their practice in real time to be responsive to it. Obviously, it's really good practice to record all of this. Planning a range of support and extension activities for specific students is one way to do this, but just as important are informal annotations on lesson plans and schemes of work, and showing how learning is being adapted and differentiated in direct relation to the students' progress and learning needs. Sometimes teachers overlook or take for granted the English, maths and digital skills needed to complete activities. Remembering that GCSE grades don't always guarantee a full depth and breadth of skills and knowledge, as students can have strengths and knowledge gaps and lower levels of confidence in some of the areas, so it's worth considering those too when planning differentiated learning. So now we'll talk about the Education and Childcare T Level and what might impact on a teacher's practice. So student levels of motivation and engagement, their expectations and confidence levels, what support's available, home and in school or college. We've already mentioned IT skills, the English and math skills and attitudes, and levels of progress as well, and their ability to cope and the levels of resilience, the work ethics, work experiences, the circumstances within the cohort, for example, relationships within the student group, who works best with who, etc., all impact on differentiation strategies. Students' problem-solving skills and abilities, their awareness of their strengths and weaknesses, their preferred learning styles we've already talked about, and especially important, the students' prior learning experience as well. We've also got LDD and SEN, the finances, and of course, with teenagers, the time of day and year, etc. So there's lots of stuff going on there that could really impact on how you differentiate the activities in your session. I'm going to ask Janet to talk about the core new content, please, first of all.
Thank you. So when we look at the T-level qualification and we think about what's in that core, there are sections that look at English as an additional language. So we're thinking about differentiation there. We're thinking about the requirements there from a curricular point of view, but also then strategies. We're recognizing that English as an additional language is not a SEND sort of identicator, but we're thinking about particular strategies and being able to nurture the child's first language. So what do we do for children and young people to enable them to learn and to enable them to grow holistically? thinking about students within our own teaching and learning environments as well, of course, that may have English as an additional language, and how we can perhaps learn from each other in respect of that. Thinking about legislation, making sure that students are aware of that. But the greatest thing, when I think about everything that Helen's talked about today, and within the T level, whether it's in the core or indeed whether it's in the occupational specialisms, it's about relationships. It's about that positivity. It's about respecting and valuing and thinking, okay, I think this is a really good idea to teach this, and then making sure that that really good idea is sprinkled with all of those strategies that are able to meet the individual needs of the students. And giving students that role modeling through that pedagogy is absolutely crucial to enable them to then take on board that sort of view of differentiation, that view of equality in their own experiences and what they do in industry, and then share back what's going on. So in terms of the T level there, yes, there are academic level and expectations, assessment, exams, employer set project, all of those things are within the core and make that up. But in terms of equality, there are specific elements within the core, and there are also specific performance outcomes when you think about the occupational specialisms. And the biggest things are about making those links between work-related skills and what's been learned in the classroom environment, and having that positive approach to differentiation makes a massive, massive difference. So taking on board what's in the core, thinking about what resources you already have to be able to teach around these different elements, and making strong links between theory and practice, and also embedding. Helen's talked about English, maths and digital skills, embedding that within the teaching and learning that you're doing, and bringing out reflection in sort of in line with those students' developing needs.
Yeah, and I think what we've got there now is a summary of everything we've talked about in today's session. So
Yes.
everything directly relates to the T level qual. Um, so yes, strong links there. Please reminder on to put something into the question box if you have anything. So we've got some questions just for you to have as takeaways to help you review your E&D and differentiated teaching and learning assessment practice, and these are quite rhetorical. They're for you, as I say, to take away. Do you make assumptions? What support and extension activities do you use? How effective are they? Do they improve engagement and progress in learning? Are your students being stretched effectively? And are they aware themselves as individuals and becoming professionals in the sector of their development needs, their strengths, their areas for improvement? Janet, anything else you want to add to there?
I don't think so, Helen. I think what's been covered really does make those strong links to what happens in the teaching and learning environment and what's happening within education and childcare within the requirements of the qualifications. And all of those questions there are brilliant questions for reflection. And making the most of any extension activities that are on some of the resources, but also in those tutor activity packs as well. They might be really good starter and finisher activities, and just making sure that such things are there for every student, and that students are able to contribute and participate at their own level and gain something from their own contributions.
Lovely, thank you. We haven't had any questions come in, but I am going to say that the question box is still there, so please pop any questions you have. We do like to ask you for takeaways as well. If you have anything that has resonated particularly with you. Just attending the session is the start of effective CPD. What we need you to do is we'll encourage you to use what you've heard, learned or thought about today to evaluate your practice on an ongoing basis and to try out different formative assessment activities and teaching and learning activities and evaluate their effectiveness in relation to the TQ, the Education and Childcare Technical Qualification. So we have one final poll to launch. Just bear with me a second, I will bring that up. So after attending the session, do you feel that your knowledge, confidence, etc. of equality, diversity and differentiation changed at all? Has it greatly improved, moderately improved, slightly improved, or have you consolidated your skills and knowledge? If you could let us know how you feel the session content has helped you with today. And wonderful, thank you, everyone's voted. The vast majority of people have said that it's consolidated their knowledge, which is just as, if not more important. You don't necessarily have to improve it. It just sort of reassures you and guarantees, if you like, that what you're doing is right. What you're doing is meeting the needs of your students. Janet, I'm going to let you do the farewells. Apart from, please, a quick reminder that we do ask you to complete our evaluation form as you log out. We really do use your feedback and ideas to inform what we do. So I'm going to say farewell and let Janet, hand over to Janet for a final few words.
Thank you, Helen. And if people are listening to this webinar live, then, thank you from Helen and from everyone at NCFE for everything that you do. And we wish you a wonderful Christmas break and a wonderful 2022. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much. Thanks, Helen.